short video diary showing you what I do for my disciplines pretty much every day, especially if I'm home. If I'm on the road, I might not do all of these. I make exceptions to my discipline routine when I'm on the road, just so I can stay fully present and not be trying to be loaded with guilt for not doing my disciplines. But I'm trying to talk quietly. It's really early in the morning here. I'm dressed and prepared to go to the gym this morning. It's something I've started this year to try to make myself a little bit more healthy, not just spiritually, but physically. So right now it's about 4:30 in the morning. I don't want to wake up my kids. At this point, I've been up for about an hour. I've been doing things like getting ready. I have tried to mix into my morning routine different disciplines, different moments of prayer or reflection. So while I'm brushing my teeth, and then I stop to pray, and then I'll be in the shower, or I'll be shaving my head, and I'll be having a blessing. There are just different moments during the day. Before and after I eat, there are different unique blessings that I might say. A short example of one of those would be before I eat, as I'm preparing my food, there's a blessing that I recite, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. It's a traditional Jewish blessing. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, for bringing forth bread from the earth. So I've kind of sprinkled throughout my morning routine opportunities to see God at work. Eventually, I make my way down here. Like I said, about 4:30. None of my family is awake. It's just me time before I leave for the gym. And I'm going to do a couple things before I head out for the gym. One of those is this. I'm going to spend a portion of my time memorizing the text. And so I come down here in the morning. I turn on the fire. It's April. It's still a little chilly in the morning, and I enjoy just being down here in the quiet. And I'm going to memorize a portion of my text this morning. I'm going to memorize this portion right here for this week. I'll work all week on this portion here. It's out of the Gospel of Mark. That's just what I've been. I'm trying to wrap up the Gospel of Mark before I move on to a new book. I think I'm going to bounce over to the book of Genesis after I get Mark done. So I'm going to work this whole week on memorizing that text. You'll notice I'm standing as I memorize because I pace. I think one of the things I've learned from the Jewish tradition is if you memorize while pacing, you can match your cadence to the words that you're memorizing from the text. So I will pace kind of around our kitchen and through our living room, and I will pace as I memorize that text. The next thing that I'm going to do before I head out to the gym is I'm going to want to spend just some personal devotional time with God, prayer time, reflection time, time of just silence and listening. And so one of the things that I'll do is I'll use a devotional as I sit here in front of the fire for the morning. And right now I happen to be using not necessarily a devotional, but a book of poetry. I've been working through Scott Cairns' poetry. This is his entire collection called The Slow Pilgrim. And so I'll spend some time in the morning on one of his poems, and I'll use it as just an opportunity to think and reflect as I sit here. It might lead me into prayer. Just time spent with Jesus as I prepare for my day. This is good time spent for me as well. Okay, so now it's a little bit later in the morning. I am back from the gym, and everybody is up and awake. And so I have kind of two sides of my disciplines. I have a more personal, reflective, quiet side of my disciplines that I enjoy doing before anybody's up and awake for the morning, just time by myself. And then I have some disciplines that might be a little bit more academic in nature. It doesn't bother me that there's people up and moving around, and that doesn't get in my way. And so I'm now here. The kids leave for school in about an hour, and I'll take them to school as part of my morning routine. But everything before this is kind of my time and space to pursue my disciplines. I try to get all that done so that by the time I get back from taking my kids to school, I'm ready to dive into my workday head first. So that's what we're doing. So here I am, and here's my next discipline that I do every single day. This is what I call memorizing the skeleton. And so I'm here in my garage in my office, and one of the things that I do every day is I have the Bible books here on a little digital post-it note, numbered 1 through 66, and I have Siri pick a number between 1 and 66 for me, and this morning she's chosen Hosea, number 28. And so this is what I call memorizing the skeleton of the text. What I have is my old NIV Bible. I've had this Bible since, golly, I don't know how long, but it's my personal Bible, and I've grown up with the NIV 84 translation. So the Bible that I'm used to has these subtitles in it all throughout the book. And so here we are in Hosea. So when I talk about memorizing the skeleton of the text, what I've taken time to do, it took me about 2.5 years to do, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I memorized all the subtitles of the scriptures so that I could just have I'm trying to build a familiarity with the text. I want to memorize the text. I believe that understanding the text and how it moves is going to help me memorize the text. And so I memorized all those subtitles, and now what I've done for years is just have Siri pick that number. Whatever Bible book she picks, that's the one I'm going to work on and recite. And so here we've done the book of Hosea. Now Hosea has 14 chapters, so I put those 14. I'm going to not look at my Bible. I'm going to come over here to my whiteboard, and we're going to talk about the 14 chapters of Hosea. We'll see if I can do this at the same time. But chapter 1 is about Hosea's children and wife. I abbreviate because it's just for me. 2 is Israel's punishment and restoration. And then 3 would be Hosea's reconciliation to his wife. 4 would be the charge against Israel. Chapter 5 is judgment against Israel. Chapter 6 and 7 is a whole section on how Israel is unrepentant. And then chapter 8 is how Israel, because of this, is going to reap the whirlwind. And then chapter 9 and 10 is all about this punishment of Israel. In chapter 11, we're going to move towards God's love for Israel, but chapter 12 is going to be about Israel's sin. So chapter 13 ends up being about God's anger, but chapter 14, the book ends with a whole bit about repentance. Israel's repentance will bring a blessing. And so basically what I did there was I just recited what I called the skeleton of Hosea. And again, just doing this every single day, all the books of the Bible, just keeps me familiar with, if I were to be out and about and somebody were to start talking to me about Hosea, I have a certain understanding of how the book of Hosea works. And I think it just allows God to use me as a teacher, to speak to me through his scriptures, and to help give me insight as a Bible teacher. My next discipline that I engage in every single day is writing the text, and that's pretty straightforward. So after reciting the skeleton of the text, I'm also going to devote a portion of my morning to simply taking a page or so out of the Bible and writing that portion of text. I type it. All my disciples have, almost all, there's only a couple of my disciples that type it like I do. Most of them have decided to hand write it, and they like writing the scriptures by hand. So I prefer to type it. It's just preference. You'll notice I'm using a different Bible. For each one of my disciplines, I was memorizing out of a different Bible. Then I was reciting my skeleton. I am writing out of a different Bible than those two. And it just, again, I want to see the Bible from as many different angles. I want to get the text in me in as many different ways as I possibly can. And so what I do here is pretty straightforward. It won't take a lot of explanation, but every day I write out a portion of text. Right now I'm in the book of Jeremiah. I've been writing out all the books of Moses. I started working through some of the prophets, and after working through Isaiah, I'm now in Jeremiah. So I think I left off right here yesterday, or should I say last week, when I
last did this. The Lord Almighty is his name. And I just come over here and I am transcribing and writing that text into some general Word document. So today I will pick up and I will essentially write through this whole portion here and probably finish out that portion there for today. And again, this is just disciplines that I do to increase my familiarity with the text and just make sure the text is flowing through me. I'm very passionate about the Bible, and so this is something that I devote quite a bit of my time to. And finally, one of the last disciplines that I do every single day is I just make sure that I'm studying. I'm a teacher, and so in order for me to be a good teacher, a teacher that I believe God can use in unique ways and to be full of, I don't know, hopefully insight, potentially even wisdom, I need to be chewing up new information, learning all kinds of new things. And so every day I read at least one chapter of research or study of different kinds. Right now I happen to be working through this book right here, taking a more in-depth look at the Epic of Gilgamesh. And this is going to allow me just to study this. I teach on this whenever I go through my Genesis material and creation narratives and those tales of Genesis 1 through 11 and how they interact with the ancient tales that the people of the Bible were used to. So just some study that I'm doing there. But I have a whole stack of books that hide right around the corner here. That's my research stack. When I get through this stack, I will eventually place another book order. I will order some more books. Those aren't all new books. Some of those are old books, and some of those are new books. And there's a little bit of everything in there. I've got, this is Brene Brown. If anybody knows Brene Brown, this is actually her research material before she wrote her books. And next book in there is a book on atonement. So I have, what would you call this? Relationships, personal development. I got theology, The Broken Way, some personal development. Then I got a trilogy here of Christian history, just kind of a big text, group of textbooks, a series, if you will, 3 volumes worth of church history, and it just goes on and on and on, a little bit of everything. There's even a fiction book hiding in there somewhere, just because I try to keep things fresh and mixed up. But yeah, that stack will take me, hopefully, I hope I can get that stack done in the next 6 to 9 months. Before I place my next book order. But that's a big passion of mine. And some of those books are coming from my library. My library sits right here in my garage. And so I'll pick one of those shelves and I'll pull some books off of those as well. And that's what makes up that stack that you just saw there. So reading and study is important to me and something that I try to devote my time to every single day. And so just to wrap up here, I wanted to point out a couple things that you might notice. One of those is that I have, as I mentioned before, kind of these 2 kinds of disciplines, 2 different areas, 2 different spaces that I create. One space for a little bit more personal, more reflective, prayerful, listening, talking to God, hearing from God, trying to create those kind of spaces. And in a lot of ways, disciplines are about my part and God's part. I have to do my part, and I trust that God does his part. Now, in that first space of disciplines, and those more personal and reflective, a lot of it leans more on God's part, maybe we might say. I create the space, and I don't know what the proportional percentage is. I don't know if it's 30-70, but I do the work of creating the space, and then I trust that God is going to pour into me whatever he chooses to pour into me. I just have to show up, and then God is going to do his work by pouring into or speaking into my life in different ways. But the second space of disciplines is maybe more about me. It's about me showing up and being faithful and doing those disciplines. And a lot of that is about me just trying to live in my giftedness and my design. God's designed me as a teacher. And so there are certain spaces that I need to be faithful in creating, and God will do his part. But those spaces might rely more on me being faithful to show up and do my part. You know, the study, the recitation, the writing of the text. These are things that really it's about me showing up every single day and punching play. And these things are important. And I've written before in my blog about if we create space, I believe that God will fill it. And this is how I create space. Some of the space more dependent on God. Some of those spaces may be more dependent on me. But both of those spaces, something that I believe that if we show up time and time again, God will fill. I have to show up and do these disciplines whether I feel like it or not. I have to show up and do these disciplines whether I think they're working or whether I feel any sense of fulfillment. I just find with our students and our culture and our world, we stop doing disciplines the moment that we don't feel like they're meaningful. That's not discipline. That's not a pursuit of God. One of the things I've learned from the Jewish tradition is our pursuit of God comes from our faithfulness. It doesn't come from the warm fuzzies that we get because we feel like when we show up, God always speaks to us. I go through long seasons and periods of my life where I don't feel like I'm hearing from God. God feels distant, we might say. You show up. You show up every single day. You keep putting in the time. You keep creating the space because you believe that it's going to bear fruit at some point in your journey. So that would be one thing I would reflect on, the importance of that. It's that space, looking back over the last 12, 14 years of my life, those spaces have changed me more than anything that I've done. Personally, my personal development has come more from the things that God has done through my pursuit of Him. And I'm thankful to mentors, Bill Westfall, Steve Edwards, people that taught me what it meant to do this, which kind of leads me to my last point. You'll notice with all these disciplines, these are things that I can teach my students. In some of the videos, you've actually seen Kevin sitting next to me while I do these disciplines. These are disciplines that can be mimicked. These are disciplines that can be imitated. And so if you've been following my blog in these other series, you have been reading about pursue, model, and teach. So this is my pursue. This is my discipline. And I'm going to be able to model that discipline for my disciples. My disciples can come into this garage and they can sit in these chairs and they can actually do what I do. And it's also something I can teach. I can teach them how to memorize the skeleton of the text. I can teach them how to write out the text. I can teach them how to memorize. These are things that can be pursued, they can be modeled, and they can be taught to other people. And so as we've been writing about that and examining that and exploring that, I just wanted to show you some real life, this is what it looks like, tangible things of this is what it looks like for me and how it gets lived out.